Oh,
I
yeah.
want to say another benefit of templates is I'm lazy. And so one of the great benefits of
We know.
templates is they just, I mean, I couch it in consistency but really it's like just so much less work for me to just plop that template on. So if you're lazy like me, templates are the way to go.
All right, welcome everybody to our first episode of Ask and Praxis for January 10th, 2024. And we have a new slide for today because we have some new people. We have some old people and we have some new people. So as always, we have Todd and Derek and myself and Mark. We've just been talking about is over in Italy, poor Italy. And then we have a new member. So we have Patrick Cash Peterson joining us as a UX specialist, as a full-time Simpraxian. Welcome, Patrick, to the craziness. All right, let's move on. Today we are continuing on the topic we sort of started at the end of last year, which was templates. We did a template introductory session where we kind of went over everything that we kind of think of as templates. And so this time we're going to dive in specifically to content types and document templates. So we'll go back again, refresh, rehash, what's a template? You know, we forgot everything after we had all our beverages through the new year, so we need to start over.
Cheese.
What's it?
Don't forget the cheese.
We had a lot of cheese. What is a template? And then ways to template in Microsoft 365, specifically content types, document templates, and we threw Todd a bone, and hopefully we won't have time for him at the end, and we'll cut him off. All right. Derek, you're going to lead the charge because we have no more.
I am.
We had no
I
more.
am. So in the spirit of like channeling my inner Mark, I wanted to refresh with the dictionary definition. Mark loves to use the dictionary definitions of things. And so in talking about what a template is, the dictionary defines it as a pattern or a mold. When we start talking about it in terms of content, it's really anything that determines or serves as a pattern or a model for you to use going forward. And so, you know, you can use my notes as a template for the employee evaluations. Basically, it's the copy paste, right? It's how do you replicate something over and over again? And why do we use a template? What is a template? It's a way for us to provide repeatability. It's a way for us to ensure consistency and governance, right? And it's a way to encapsulate institutional knowledge. It's a way for us to make sure that the things are the same regardless across the board. Templates are usually just a starting point. They are used as an initial starter. So whether you're talking about a site or a list template, you know, those are the starting point, and then you can modify them. Content types are a little different because you can't actually change them and move them forward. And that's that. So Julie, you want to move forward? Oh, yeah.
I want to say another benefit of templates is I'm lazy. And so one of the great benefits of templates is they just, I mean, I couch it in consistency but really it's like just so much less work for me to just plop that template on. So if you're lazy like me, templates are the way to go.
I mean, Todd, you're right. It is true. I mean, setting it, you are lazy. In setting things up at the beginning, you do end up actually saving yourself and your users a lot of work on the back end, and when they're trying to enter their content. So by taking that time to define the templates up front, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that's another thing. So for those of us who do support, if you have templates and stuff, it reduces the number of calls you get because people can also be lazy and use your templates. So yeah, there's a lot of lazy benefits to templates.
Big win.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So when we start talking about content types as a type of template, you know, first I want to talk a little bit about what a content type is. And for those of you who have been around in SharePoint for ages, apologize, but I really wanted to start at the bottom level. And at its core, a content type is really a collection of structured or unstructured data that represents a thing, that represents a business object. So whether that's, you know, a benefit or a contract or a vacation request, it's that definition of that thing and the data that's behind it. Microsoft 365 content types allow us to inherit. So you can build up from a base all the way up to really complex, intricate hierarchies of content that allows you, again, to improve that consistency and repeatability. And also, when you want to use content across the entire enterprise, you can actually elevate that up to the enterprise level in the content type gallery. And so you can see some examples here of types of content types. So benefits description, contacts, enrollment form, facilities capabilities, those kinds of things.
When I'm telling folks about this, because again, being a lazy admin, I try to push as much work off to the business users as I can. And when I talk to them about content types, like that phrase is sort of nebulous. And then I'm like, well, it's a type of content,
yep.
Like, and then I give them those examples. And I do describe it when I describe to end users, I do describe it as a template like this. If you're going to be cranking out invoices, like I think we've got one of these things. If you've got a column that says what type of document something is, that's probably a content type. That's one of the things. It is just a type of content. That's nothing complicated.
Yeah, and we actually got a question into our Asks in Praxis hotline, either right before or right after break, asking how users sort of whether they connect with the term content type. And I will say, in my experience, absolutely not.
No.
It's they think of it as a thing, right? They think of it as, oh, that's just a contract. So when we start talking about, adding a content type to a document library, their eyes glaze over. But when you say, oh, you can go to a document library and create a new contract, that's where they start to resonate.
I think it's interesting too, because I think a lot of people put some of the metadata that we would think of as a content type into their structures when they're organizing their content and file systems, because they're going to always create a folder and then create another folder and then create another folder, and they're going to name them things that sort of help them understand what the stuff is that they're going to find in the folder at the lowest level. And so that's all metadata. That's all part of what might be included in your content type, not always, but often. So that is the same kind of idea. It's just rethinking it and relearning the structure of how they are put together. I often tell people they're kind of like just Excel spreadsheets. Like if you would have an item with a title, and then you would have a lot of columns that define what that item is, that is a content type in and of itself.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Mark is lurking. Run!
What? Run! I forgot to include that slide. We've all seen file names that say like
exactly,
like Simpraxis contract _2023 December blah 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 _ final V2. Final V2. And that's so we've all seen that. That's metadata that gets applied to our content types. Those are the kinds of things that either from your folder structure, your library structure, that all can get grouped together to define your content types.
And I will say, so I do some work with our school's PTO, PTA, and this year they've foolishly elected me as president, and I'm trying to organize all of our documents. And as for the most part, like I explain content types to end users, and then I wash my hands of them and walk off. But like I'm trying to organize all of our documents, and I'm just missing metadata and content types so much, because people are like, well, we should put all of this stuff by type. And I'm like, no, we should put it by year. And so like, no, we should have one thing with all of that. So yeah, I absolutely just in the last couple of days, I was fighting this fight and missing data and content types.
Yeah. So when it comes to building content types, a lot of times we get asked like when and why. Like why does it make the most sense? When does it make the most sense to do that? And if you recall the items from the last slide, when an object can be named, that is a perfect opportunity. So if when you're talking with your business and they say, oh yeah, these are just all the contracts, or these are the benefits, that's something that can be named, and that's something that can be promoted via search results and refined using content types. If there's additional metadata that you need to capture about it, whether it be the calendar year, the fiscal year, a type column, that's the kind of thing that you can add, and you can enhance the content type to, all those little _X are the kinds of things that you can add. when the same object or the same thing exists across multiple sites or multiple places, this is where consistency and governance really comes into play, because it lets us take that item and be consistent about how it's categorized, how it's named, how it's treated. That decentralized process also lets us create a centralized roll-up. It lets us create a decentralized roll-up so that we can pull all the content from like across all the sites in one spot. And by creating one single content type, that lets us do that. And also the last two, if you want to apply either a different business process, a flow, or some kind of like approval, that's the kind of thing that you can do. But it makes it a lot more robust if you have a content type behind it, and especially if you have a retention or a dispensation policy. That's the kind of thing you want to attach directly to a content type.
Yeah, I like the search bit. That's one of the things when I feel like for the last, 15, 20 years that I've been doing SharePoint, search has never really been given the love that it deserves. And this is one of those places where if you use content types and you search for an invoice and search knows there's a content type called invoice. Yeah.
Absolutely.
A lot of value there.
Now, we talked about the when. I want to talk about the where.
Oop,
next.
Am I going to the next line? Sorry.
He wants to talk about the where.
I'm answering Ruth.
All right. So we can essentially create things in many different places. And as a sort of best practice, you want to create it where it makes the most sense. So if you're only going to use this metadata or this content type in one specific list or library, create it locally. Add the lists, add the columns to the list. These are list columns. It gets added to the default content type for that particular list. Now, the challenge there is it's only usable in that list, nowhere else. If you're going to be using it across multiple lists in a specific site or multiple document libraries inside the same site, that's where you want to elevate it up to the site level and create site level site columns or site columns and site content types. Now, if you're going to be using things across multiple sites, that's where you want to put something at the enterprise level, and that goes into the content type gallery, or you can also use the term store, aka managed metadata or taxonomy, and you can put things up there, and then it's available across the enterprise for you to use everywhere. And a big caveat here: when in doubt, go up a level, because it's kind of a giant pain in the butt to try to go from a list to a site content, a site column to an enterprise site column, because there's lots of naming conflicts, and you end up having to like export and import all the metadata. It's a mess. So when in doubt, go up a level.
And further on that, if you think about how like site content, so this isn't true from the content type hub to a site collection or site, nowadays we call it content type, but when you go from a site content type to a library content type, it is actually a new content type that's inheriting from the parent. And so that whole trying to elevate it after the fact is always just a mess. And so I, in general, always just make a site content type and a site column and skip the library altogether. Although, yes, it can be useful, you're going to get your own version in the library anyway. And so you're just better off creating it at the site level and calling that your lowest level denominator.
I completely agree, Julie. I mean, I think in the work that we do, we predominantly use either enterprise or site level work.
Yeah.
So
I've never done it in a list, quite frankly.
All right, moving on. So I talked a little bit about that content type inheritance and that hierarchy here. For folks that have been around in SharePoint for a million years, you may know this already, but everything in SharePoint, all the content types essentially start from item. And if you look at the diagram here, item is the start. It has one field attached to it, and that's title. There's 4 system managed fields: created by, modified, and modified by. Those run across all content types, but item starts with title. Document inherits from item, and it adds a field for name and the file. So you can see things start to build up. And if we get to, say, our example of a benefits document, we can have, because it's a document and it inherits from document, it's got title and name and the 4 system fields. But then we can go on and we can add additional fields specific to that type of data, that thing. So fiscal year, contact person, enrollment link.
Oops, am I moving on?
Yep.
Sorry.
And to show this a different way, we can have our content type. So we've got document at the top. Generally, we create what we call it, we create an interstitial content type for just a base for the organization with some like.
You know that Mark created that name, right? Does everybody realize that? Okay, good. Moving on. Interstitial.
Interstitial, impotent, input.
Idempotent. Idempotent.
Yep.
Wrong word.
Yep, wrong word. All right, anyway, so we have an interstitial content type. And we generally create one for the organization in the event that we want to search, say, all the documents for the organization in the intranet or in X, Y, or Z. It gives us sort of that route. From there, we can create a benefits document, and benefits document may have that contact, enrollment link, et cetera, but then we can get more specific, maybe in specific sites or in specific libraries where we may want to create custom metadata on a plan summary or a claim form or some other type of individual discrete item that we want to start to parse out. And we can start to leverage that hierarchy to our advantage. And the reason why we want to do that in the first place is because you can then leverage that using search on the next slide. And here's an example.
Derek. Here's an example. Helping MoMA transfer. Love it.
Here's an example of a really robust benefit search that we created. It lets the user search through just a keyword search, but we've also added content types and metadata to allow us to filter that data to get right down to just the benefits data, the dental benefits data very, very quickly. It also lets us, on the next slide, contextually embed content that is related to specific pages. So because we created claim form content type and a plan summary content type, and we've tagged things with as a dental benefit on the dental page, we can then leverage all of those documents right then and there, really reducing the friction for the users to find what they're looking for. So that when they go to this page, they can go, yep, I need to submit a claim form for the dental thing, rather than go back to the general search and search for, through 10 or 20 documents.
Awesome job playing the part of Mark Anderson. Yeah.
I am seeing the note from Tom in here asking, this is both of those are the P&P search web part, not the content, highlighted content web part. And the reason why we do that is because we get a really robust ability to create custom queries, and also we can customize the result set and we can customize the filters.
Yeah. One of our previous Ask in Practice, we talked about customizing the result set in the visual of the result set in P&P Modern Search. And what's great about that is there's the out-of-the-box templates. There's templates that you can build yourself using handlebars, and then you can get really fancy. There's a way to embed H2O, which is the Fluent UI framework that Stefan Bauer and I work on. You can build out any HTML and CSS visualization for the content data in any way you want to look at it. So that is an incredibly powerful user experience. You basically have search, you have filtering, and then you have your own visualization of the results. And I think you know, this is essentially, in my mind, the modern script editor web part or content editor web part. I mean, I know that people are like, oh, we should really have a script editor or content editor web part in modern. And it's just an area where you can get yourself into a lot of mess. And I think the PnP search web parts are really that replacement. There is so much you can do with them, and so many ways you can sort of slice and dice your data in a robust way, and that leverages search. So with this, we're at the end of the content type section. We're going to go into document templates, and hopefully I'll go long enough that Todd won't have any time to speak. So that's my goal.
Well, I've been wedging myself into Derek's stuff because I know you're gonna.
No. I'm
microphone's
gonna
go into the floor. The band's gonna play me
we're gonna
off.
do that. All right. So in our previous conversation about document templates, I sort of highlighted some of the new things. I had talked about the content type hub document templates must live in the content type hub. I'm crossing that off. I'm going to show you why on the next slide. We do have new endpoints for provisioning. So if you're a coder, we have get compatible hub content types and add copy from content type hub. Those are graph endpoints for the provisioning coding side of things. The new experience in document libraries is not always what you'd want, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. Macro templates are not the only exception anymore. So let me move on to sort of some testing. So I have a bunch of clients that have used content types with associated document templates in the past, in 2013, 2019, 2016, those environments. And so that a lot of that was classic UX, and now we have sort of the modern UX, and we've been advancing the modern UX, or Microsoft's been advancing the modern UX with some new features and functionality. Unfortunately, we now have a bit of a broken experience. So I've tested 2 different tenants that I have full control over, and what I wanted to test was if I have a content type in the content type hub and I associate a template with it, and I'll go through what that means. When I first publish it and I consume it in a library in a site, what happens? What's the behavior? When I say new of those things, what happens? And so I have the first published experience, and then I have, okay, what happens when I change the template and I republish the content type? So it should theoretically update. And then in the last 2 columns, I created this same exact scenario in a second tenant from scratch. And this is sort of what I ended up with. So if you are talking about a Microsoft Word template, and also these templates are all incredibly basic, like basic document started, I put a little bit of text in it and saved it as a document template in each of the different Office platforms. So with a Word template, if in the content type itself, when you go to add or reference the template, there's 2 ways you can do it. One says you already have a template and you give it a relative URL to the location of that template document. And the other way you can do it is press an upload button. And when you press the upload button, you get a browser experience, you pick your template and you hit save. And what it does is it takes that template and it puts it in a very hidden folder in the content type hub site collection that's called _CTS. It is not one you can navigate to, but if you navigate to it plus the name of the document template, it is there. So we know it's there, but it is a hidden folder on that site collection. So when you upload the Word document and you go to the new experience and you say new one of those content types that's associated with that template, it opens up a new browser tab and it shows that document template as a new document in Word in the browser. So it does that for when you first publish it, and if you change the template and re-upload the new template, hit publish again. Make sure the document type, the content type is synced in your destination site, and then go to the new experience again. It creates a new document in a browser tab. So it's the Word Online version and the template is updated. So great, that first line, everything is dandy. If you try to use a relative path, so instead of using the upload feature, you say, okay, I have you know, my word template DOTX, and I have it in a library in the content type hub itself. So I've made a library in the content type hub, and I make a relative path to that template and I publish it, etc. In one tenant, it worked. Yeah, I could hit the new experience and it would make a new document based on that template and open it up in the browser. And it worked when I republished. I changed the template in the library, but republished the content type, and it all worked. In the second tenant, I couldn't get it to work at all. I could reference that document template in the content type hub, and it was like, nope, I don't know what you're talking about, and I couldn't get it to work at all. Similarly, if I had a relative path to the library, so what if I put a library in the root site collection, let's say? Again, all broken throughout all that. And so maybe you're asking yourself, well, why would you want to have a path to a relative document library, a template in a document library? And the answer is actually, Microsoft gave us this great feature. One of the more modern features is that you can define a library as an org assets library. And there's two types of org assets libraries. There's an org assets library that is for photos, and there's an org assets library that's for templates. And the one for templates is super powerful. If I say, hey, this library is on my templates org asset library, then anytime I open the desktop apps and I'm signed into my tenant and I go to the new button, I have my organization name as a tab and I have all the templates that are in that org assets library there for me to use. The sort of problem with that experience is that they're there, but then when I go to save, I have to navigate to where I want it to save. And although the Office team has done some things to make it easy to find the sites, it's not great. Like, unless it's a recently chosen site or one that you had favorited and you recently visited, it's not in that list. And so then your only real option is to make sure you have that document library that you want to save in synced with OneDrive, and then you could just browse local and save it into the right site. So it's not an awesome experience. And so we like the idea of having a content type that says contract, and let's say we have a new project site and we want to create a new contract. Well, obviously we'll want to say new contract right there and have it save in that document library, open in the browser, maybe optionally allow the user to then open it into the Word desktop app or whatever. That's a better experience. And so with the template uploaded directly, you can kind of get that, but the problem with the template uploading the content template to the content type directly is it's in that hidden CTS folder, and we can't make it an org asset unless we have two versions. And one of our tenets is always have one source of truth for that template. And so it's just this manual process where you can absolutely see how they could get out of sync, and how then you wouldn't be using the latest and greatest template if you have that sort of segregated. When it comes to then Excel, so for both Excel and PowerPoint, there's another feature of templates that you can do. In the library, you can say upload a template. Under the new button, there's add template. And when you do add template, if you do that with a Word template, it works. But if you do it with an Excel or PowerPoint template and you hit new on that template, it just goes to a blank about page. Like, it opens a new tab, but nothing's in the tab. So that's a completely broken experience. You can then associate those templates with content types. So it would have kind of been nice for that to work, but it does not. And then, so for the other ones, and in essence of time here, all the other ones work sort of. Every time you upload the content type in one of those ways, it opens in the desktop app, not the browser app. Again, we're back to that bad experience for a save situation because it doesn't know where you came from. So you have to have a way to navigate the save back again. And then further bad is that, ironically, the uploaded template, when you change it and re-upload the template, and you can open the template and I can see that it's changed, and republish it, sync the library, and you say new, and it uses the old template. So that whole experience is kind of broken for uploaded, and relative path to the content type hub is broken from an updated perspective. Although I did get it to work with the relative paths of the Content Hub once and then not in the second tenant. So then the relative path to that central library is the better experience. So that is just a ton of information. Todd, I gave you no time at all.
I feel like Matt
go ahead
Damon
and
on
take
the
a
Jimmy
minute.
Kimmel show. Yeah.
You should.
So the
Take a
real
second.
thing about this is everything you can do in the UI, you can do better in PowerShell. That's just really we should all have that tattooed somewhere. That's just real story. But for all these things, if you want to be able to do some of these things between tenants or for documentation purposes, or you just want to play with PowerShell, one of the things that I always do is that thing there, get command, PNP star, and then what I want to play with, content type, template, whatever. And then that gives me a list of all the things that I can do. And that's when the bad ideas really come out and I can just start poking along. Before we started recording, we were talking about dev tenants and all that. That's exactly where I do all this stuff. But it's just a great way to learn. And some of those things like the hidden columns and that, you can see some stuff in PowerShell you can't always see in the UI. It's great for just getting into the bowels of things.
And then this one.
So that one was there. There's also a way you can make templates from lists. So you can design a list you want, save it out as a template, then use it as a site script and a site design. So when people create new sites, you can pick something and you can pick, accounting site or something, and it will have all of the lists and the templates and all that stuff built in. So you've got the content types and those kind of things. The important step in that is step 2 in the thing. When you do that export, you get this huge JSON file, and it is all the stuff you want and 3 times as much stuff that you don't want. And so you want to open that up and pull out all the stuff that isn't the thing that you want, and then use it.
Awesome. We had some resources. We can come back. We'll have those when we post the episode up on YouTube and on our website. And then finally, join us January 24th for page templates. We're going to dive a little deeper into those. You can see us live, Communities Miami, North American Cloud and Collaboration Summit, Microsoft 365 Conference, and European Collaboration Summit are all things we're going to be at in the coming year. Thank you all. Sorry for going over a little bit. It was wonderful to have you, and join us next time. We'd love to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask in Praxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.